I would like to ask that in a moment, when you hear a tone, for you to all close your eyes. I encourage you to take this as a moment to arrive back into this room, into your body, and to reconnect with your breath. A mini meditation. You will open your eyes when you hear music playing. Settle in. Be sure you're sitting comfortably. Close your eyes and see if you can follow your breath. Sounds will come and go. Thoughts will pass. Just keep coming back to inhaling and exhaling. When you hear music, then you will open your eyes. Inhaling and exhaling.
guilt, shame, rage, 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 guilt. Loss.
vient le jour, nous allons mourir. Je te dis merci. Je suis le maître de la vérité, du blasphème et du mensonge. Je suis le maître de l'inconscience. Je suis le maître du moi. Je suis le maître des mondes où le je n'existe plus.
That, I think, was the thing that drew me in the most, was your vulnerability. Your willingness to go where you wanted to go. So, thanks.
Reading what we read, when you first were pulling bags out, guilt, shame, rage, it felt isolated. And then when you felt loss, you were pulling that out as well, but you felt like it was a connection.
Connection to what?
To what? I don't know, but something else. That you were connected to the world, whereas the others felt like you were isolating yourself. And a lot of it felt like you were isolated. And so the readings, at least some of it, Thich Nhat Hanh, who I take with a grain of salt, but his reading of that we're all connected, that we don't have selves, I take that to heart. And that's, so when we lose ourselves, we're losing ourselves because we're isolated, I think. So, I don't know.
It's interesting that, like, we don't have selves, but when we lose ourselves, we're isolated. They're kind of...
We find ourselves. We lose ourselves.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
I'm more so curious as to what made you pick those materials. I was really interested in the plastic bags and the plastic you were moving. It was really beautiful, but what was the...
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, why the plastic bag specifically? You know, and I was experimenting with different materials that were non-normal, like theater materials for me. I had an image. The large plastic actually came out of when a dear friend of mine passed away, Susie. I was in the studio, just not. It's actually really interesting, Sam, because it leads to a process question, which is part of why this has felt courageous for myself. Is partly because I'm approaching the work from a very different way than I normally do. And when I say that, like, I use the example of like people who are theater artists or performers, you know, you work backwards from a date. right? You have a deadline, the day the show is opening, you have to have these scenes blocked by then and this choreography done by then. And so I go into the studio and say like, okay, I have choreography that I have to teach on Tuesday. I go into the studio Sunday, Monday, Tuesday day so that I have it ready for Tuesday night. Well, this was really different. So when my friend Susie was dying, I was just in the studio. I had committed for other reasons, for artistic reasons, that I was just going to regularly go into the studio without an agenda. And then I realized as she was dying that that's what I was doing. I was grieving. And what came out in the studio was my grief. And it wasn't because I went to go choreograph something about my grief. And so that was sort of an answer. The bags, I mean, again, there's something interesting that the one gets really big, which is the sheet, which isn't the bag. Yeah, and I think too, the bouffant, which is a style of character that often has a bit of grotesqueness. So when I first came out, kind of bulbous and the horns and the gloves, I felt like that was also I wanted the body itself to be what the issues were. Like, this is how we manifest, like in the world. We carry all this stuff inside of us, and it makes me sometimes unpleasant. And so that was sort of a little bit of an answer to that.
I like that part because there was such a strong dichotomy between the mood, the feelings with which you opened, plus that beautiful music that you had going on in the background. I couldn't believe that.
He composed on that. But he didn't know what he was doing. I had no idea what I was going to do with it.
So that created a very strong spiritual mood, and the black and the kind of struggling yoga against the wall, and then this emerging strange creature, buffoon. I thought that was that really threw me off, because you pulled us into a dimension, and then you came out with something that was diametrically opposite. Somebody really lost in their foolishness, and however you want to characterize that, but it was so opposite of what I was expecting. I thought that was really strong. And I guess in saying that, maybe I wanted that to go a little bit further, that part, because I thought the contrast was so good.
Yeah. I think that Michael and I think that Dick, who sort of surprised me by coming to the dress rehearsal last night, had a similar response, that if there's a place that I might flesh out, it might be spending more time with the bouffant, spending more time with that. But also because comedy isn't my immediate go-to.
Right.
What do you?
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you should listen to him.
Well, and I just not that I want to hear you more, than me talk. Although I'm happy to answer questions if you have questions like Sam had. But it was such a wonderful discovery to find the nun. When I stuck my face out.
That's what I wrote down immediately, a homunculus nun.
I mean, and that was just that one day I was working in a studio that had a mirror, and I was like trying to get out of it, and the rubber gloves always get stuck, so I'm always like can't unzip myself, and suddenly I was there and I was like, oh. Yeah. I mean, like exactly like a nun. Yeah. Just like the interesting way that things happen. Yeah. Again, you don't have to have, but yeah, tough love. Hi.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's interesting work and so many formations. And, the first image was such credible. That's born and thrown out like a guilty, and the biggest is the loss. The question I have to ask, it's I hear explanation about how you feeling, about your feeling, about you lost your friends, and sometimes you have something to take out from your body. So I hear what you're feeling more than the feeling that come from out. I'm looking for the word in French, so that's what is the words without what we hear tonight? You didn't tell us.
If I understand, Toto, am I hearing that part of what you are hungry for is more concrete understanding of the journey, of the story, or no? No, okay.
No, I would love to understand that too, because it's part of the work. Because we came here to understand and make some research, questioning also. But without questioning what we saw tonight, what would you like us to understand without the words that you told us?
So there's sort of parallel investigations that are happening for me. Some of it is around loss, dying and death. Some of it is around the integration of the self and the experiences that we have and how that informs these cycles. So it's almost as if, and it kind of is going to lean in a little bit to what you said, Art, but it's like pulling towards the unconscious with the hope, and that what comes up isn't my story necessarily, that it is what comes up for you. If I'm experiencing loss, if I'm navigating whatever that is for me, especially if I'm not giving you text and telling you I lost this, or this is what I'm grieving, or these are the things that happened that feel like loss, then it gives you space to let what comes up in you. What have you lost? What do you grieve? Without my kind of imposing upon you my story. And I'm having to ask myself with sharpness if that's enough, if that's a cheat, if that's, like where the line is between creating a container for people to enter the experience where they are and take what they're ready for. But let me go back. So this idea of the integration of the self, and then also like consciousness and the nature of reality and interdependence. There's a Robert Bly essay called the long black bag we drag behind us, something like that. And that informs this quite a bit. The shadow bag. And yet, part of why I end up naked at my age is as heavy as I've ever been and as old as I've ever been in front of you all, isn't just because I feel like getting naked in front of like people. Part of it is that there's this whole there is. I am who I am, and you are who you are, and I want you to have permission to be who you are. And one of the best ways I can do that is by being who I am. And then one of the reasons that the color paint that I put on my body is the same color that I painted the things that I encountered and made theater with, tables, chairs, is it feels like that, that essential being, that thing that is you, art, that is me, that goes on when I'm dead, that was here before this body was conscious and alive, like that to me was a place that, again, I'm not out here, you know, spouting spiritual practice, and yet it's a spiritual practice for me, that this is the same as this, it's the same. Yeah, I don't know that answers your question. But one of the things too, like just because I touched on the purple, like this whole table chair thing, also like when I put the one upside down, aside from the fact that there's a clarity of something that's finite and no longer what it was, but I also really loved the discovery of it's one now. It's one thing, and that's all in me, and which is where I can go back and sort of wipe that away, even though it doesn't really go away. Anything else?
The last images was beautiful. Seeing you in front of, you know, seeing you there was, the image was very, very, very beautiful. It's such amazing. So the way that you work to give that, like you were like a shadow, you know, and like it was like infinity of life. I was seeing you just go through that images, you like universe. And yeah, that means you start very beautiful and the end was beautiful. The journey that I asked to myself a different question. Maybe I will send email or something about what I get, but I will just...
Actually a really good point that you bring up, and I want to make, you know, I'm not saying we have to be done now, but there is a self-addressed stamped envelope with a blank piece of paper inside of it, so that as opposed to an email, you can actually send me a letter. Doesn't have to be a letter, it could be scratches of words, but like in the post. Not that you can't send me an email, but you have a self-addressed stamped envelope for, especially Toto, because sometimes there's one thing right now, this just happened, I haven't even given you a chance to really process it. But in a few days, or tomorrow, if you have a thought, to just like write it down, like old school, and like stick it in the mail. So yeah, I would love the thoughts that come later. And saying that too, that I feel like it's, yes, I ultimately had to go and like dramaturgically crafted to have something to share with you. But that doesn't mean it's, you know, finished. There's, you know, it wants more breath in it and some other things. So, yeah.
Why I'm sorry.
Why at the end?
Yeah.
So, here's why. It's an excellent question. Because it felt like, all right, here I am. naked as a jaybird. And then like with the paint and in my mind connected to all of this and feeling in my power, and then suddenly my neurosis kicks in. The neuroses we all have, they manifest differently, but suddenly I'm like, oh no, I screwed it up again. I got paint all over everything. I got stuff on the floor. I'm doing it wrong again. Here I go, doing it wrong again. Oh my God, I'm freaking, And then it's like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Why am I apologizing? It's okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm who I am. That was sort of the process for me. And Gesundheit. And again, that was what it came out of. Was just feeling like we all have these neuroses, and when we're more in balance, we can roll with it. And for me, like I have like, you know, stuff, and suddenly I'm not grounded and not the kind, you know. So that was why the I'm sorry. Yeah.
So first, thank you. That was absolutely amazing. Secondly, not sure how you got in my head and put that as a performance of art. It's pretty wild. Your story, as you described it, is very similar to how I saw it. I also had my own ways, but I did put myself into your story. And it's interesting to hear the artist's perspective on what they see and then what the other audience has seen. I feel honored to have seen this, to be one of the first. I also then say to myself, I can see this with a larger audience. I would love a larger audience to be able to participate in this. My brain works in more visual than it does anything, and so it's a mess. So I don't know if you want me to leave this or mail it to you. I absolutely love mail. But I just wanted, it was an interesting process. I almost, in my own thoughts, the way it processed was very unique in being a one-person thing. It almost felt like you were multiple entities. And to see you evolve into these other, I guess, parts of your life or parts of your feelings or parts of your emotion, especially down where you were saying after you become one with what your materials are, you're still trying to get forgiveness, even though you're trying to be yourself. It was very heavy, and that was just my opinion of the processing. The music was very interesting, and it was felt deep down, and you went right back into the breath at the end, and I thought that was a great, pulling it all back around. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves. Thank you very much.
It's interesting, and I'll just comment on like audience size. Aside from, I really did want to, a feedback audience. It became like you're separated. The reason you're separated is because, and I don't know how many of you saw the shadow on the ceiling. How many of you actually saw the shadow on the ceiling? Some. Okay, interesting. So when I was up here, the shadow was on the ceiling, and it was huge. And somewhat grotesquely shaped, but and that's a tricky question I have, because I don't know how to tell people that to look there.
But sometimes it's the luck to do it actually.
To see it.
Even that, what I did was
right.
So
it wasn't missing anything.
Luck view, I guess.
We'll look up.
And plus, in a bigger auditorium, maybe that would be more.
And this was sort of why I had to place the audience this way, because this theater and the complicated grid, the only place you could see it is exactly where you're seated and where I'm placed. So if the audience was bigger, you would not be able to see the shadow on the ceiling. Which also, I was trying to be like, and there's other places when it gets dark, but I didn't do a very good job. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I really, really appreciate your coming out and taking this little journey with me. I don't know if anybody else has anything they're burning to say.
That's the last question.
Yeah.
What means the title?
Umbra. What does it mean?
What is
Well, Umbra is, it's so the penumbra is the, if there's an eclipse, it's the darkest part right around the edge of where the light is. That's where it came from, was this sort of cradling darkness around the edge where the light meets. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So again, I encourage you to pop something in the mail to me. If you don't, write to someone else. You have a stamped album. You could just put a piece of tape over the thing. Super, really. Thank you so much. There's a chance I think we might be trying to catch some of that shadowy stuff in light once, so once y'all go. The photographers are going to try and catch the shadow stuff that they couldn't catch with their lenses. All right.
Thank you.